Hello, 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 and welcome to the very first episode of Well, That's a Concept. This week, we're going to be talking about in our very first episode uh, why people get so upset about Zennial and even some millennial shows that talk about mental health issues in ways that are considered romanticized. Also, side note, there eventually will be a logo for That's a New Concept, but today is not that day. Back to my point. So this is probably going to be a short video just because it can go in depth, but this is really just sort of a way to frame it for you. So people just like shows like Euphoria, 13 Reasons Why. Okay, so I also don't like 13 Reasons Why, but there's a certain amount of defense there. They don't like a lot of, there's a couple of YouTube shorts, and just in general we just like shows. I remember Skins, if you're old enough to remember Skins, like when Dev Patel and Nicholas Hoult were just like awkward little beans. A lot of people didn't like, I can't remember the girl, I can't remember her name. I just I thought I would remember it, but I can't. One of the characters also is a self-harmer. And we have this big issue where we're like, they're romanticizing mental illness, and teenagers aren't really like that. Okay, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, and I understand that it's a unique thing, but I live in LA. Whenever I watch Euphoria and these kids are making bad choices and they're dressed the way they are, and our our drug addict and our self harmers and our partying and the sleeping with people's parents, I'm like, yeah, that is exactly what growing up in LA was like. I think we have this unfortunate idea that's come up, um, where we've painted mental illness and the way in which people experience it in two ways. It's either almost like working class families that don't think it exists or ignoring it or think it's a problem that can't be had if you're black or poor or whatever, or we've painted it, thanks to Lifetime movies, as it's like a rich people um disorder and kind of thing. I think Degrassi's probably the show that does the best to show that across many socioeconomic levels and ethnicities and religions, all sorts of things can happen in teenagers. But I think here in America, we like to think that there's only two kinds of problem kids, right? And shows like Euphoria really kind of show you that in places like Los Angeles, it is the wild, wild west. It's not necessarily romanticizing it. It's yeah, your local drug addict can also, dress up and look fabulous and party and hang out with their friends and go to school and then right back to one and start the cycle over again and know she's not strung out on a street corner somewhere. And I think that makes people uncomfortable. This idea that one can do drugs and party and be fine. I really think that that's really the thesis statement of this. Is it's kind of what Skin showed. It was yeah, these kids are having sex and doing drugs and partying and they're fine. And the ones that aren't fine go into treatment, come back out, and are fine. We still very much like this narrative of, great, if you have drinking problems and you develop them as a teenager, then you never drink again. If you abuse drugs, then you are going to get strung out, it's going to ruin your life, and then you're going to have to learn to abstain. You're going to have to hit rock bottom and never do drugs again. And I think what millennials and zennials have proven is actually no, not necessarily. A lot of people have issues with AA overall. I think if you do some Googling, you'll learn that it actually wasn't originally so heavy with Christian dogma. In fact, it had zero Christian dogma in it. And you only hear about the successful cases because the ones that fail are shamed so much within the framework and society that you don't hear about the ones that fail. You only hear about the successful ones, and so you begin to think that is the only way to deal with it. But what I always challenge people to do is read the 12 steps as if it were a boyfriend speaking to his girlfriend, or a girlfriend speaking to their boyfriend, or a boyfriend speaking to boyfriend. You get the picture. Just look at it that way, as if it's a significant other speaking to the partner. And what you'll find, I'm going to spoil it for you, is it sounds like an abusive relationship, and your friends would 100% be doing an intervention. It is super, super unhealthy. And so for a lot of millennials and zennials, there are other ways. There's one called SMART. It's an acronym. Don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's basically a better, different way of dealing with it. And also, just like I said, a lot of zennials and millennials just like went to fucking therapy and got better coping mechanisms, and like can now use those coping mechanisms for the things that they were drinking about, and now can drink with their friends occasionally. And also they have less world crushing views. I think for Gen X and above, drinking and drugs, it made you a bad person. It ruined your life. You weren't inherently bad. It was all bad. Even when you did tell your story, it was how you overcame to have a better life. And I think for a lot of millennials and zennials, it's like, I mean, yeah, it sucks. Holy shit, mania blows. Good lord, crushing depression can ruin your life. But also, like, you also go out and party with your friends. Like, also, like, yeah, you and your friends maybe do wax poetic about self-harm and other things. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means it's not a dirty little secret. It's not a club anyone ever wants to join, but as long as you're a member, which I think is what often puts people off, they take this idea from even just like, 13 Reasons Why, which is, pretty obnoxious and awful show, this idea that you would leave 13 tapes for people and tell them why you committed suicide, and that's horrible and terrible and guilting people and not a thing that people do. Honestly, I think millennials and zennials are actually the kind of spiteful, petty people who would be like, yeah, bitch, you're so bad that I didn't want to live. I'm not saying that's good or healthy. I'm saying it is 100% the kind of thing that we would do and people have done. And so I think when people say romanticize, I think they mean it is not a somber, your life will be over unless you deal with it. It is sometimes like, yo, you ride the mania until you come down. And yep, you might crash and burn, but you're going to have friends who are going to put out the flames, and you're going to start the cycle all over again. And I think that freaks people out. I think the fact that, like, kids aren't running to rehab, and that, like, the drugs don't scare them, and that they're handling it in their own ways, and that they're, like, finding joy with other people who are also just fucking crazy. I say that as part of the club, therefore I get to say the word crazy. And I think it makes people uncomfortable. And I think that's a new concept for people. This idea that, like, the story isn't going to be, oh my god, this is how I became a teenage alcoholic and my life's went out of control, and then I went to 12-step or inpatient and now I never drink again. Which is actually Daniel Radcliffe's story, but, like, nope, he is not a sanctimonious dick about it. Yeah, so fun fact, the pressure got to him while filming Harry Potter, and while he was a teenager, he started drinking really, really heavily. And sadly, Warner Brothers kind of just said, yeah, we just had to kind of put up with it. Instead of, like, getting him help, getting him a sober companion, whatever. So basically, he was a teenage alcoholic for, like, probably, like, the back third of the franchise. And then, got help for it and no longer drinks. But he's not a sanctimonious ass, and he doesn't go around being like, y'all shouldn't be romanticizing this. Back to my point. I digress there. Basically what I'm saying is the new concept here is it doesn't have to be a Lifetime movie. And I think that makes people really uncomfortable. I think it's why Euphoria sits wrong with people. I think it's why 13 Reasons Why sits wrong with people. I think it's why several other movies sit really wrong with people and TV shows. It's just the idea that the world doesn't end. That, like, doing drugs recreationally isn't gonna kill you always. like growing up in LA, I always thought it was really, really weird when I watched movies and it was like they did drugs and spiraled out of control, and I was like, everyone I know does drugs. Like the idea that pot was illegal, like I knew intellectually it was illegal because you know I watched TV, but like I also grew up in Venice, so like pot lollipops were a thing. I had quite a few, like you know. So that just, I think that's why people are so upset by TV shows like this. You know, it's kind of like when people were saying, oh, you know, Tumblr and I think Instagram used to have My Secret Family, which is basically the tag for kids who are self harming. Um, and that people were like, oh my God, like they're, you know, encouraging one another. And yes, there were finspo, and there were definitely some people who were like encouraging folks, but for the most part, what it was a bunch of kids going, we're fucked up, but at least we can be fucked up together and not alone in our rooms isolated. And I think a lot more kids survived because of Tumblr. Maybe less Instagram, but Tumblr and Twitter, and being able to like be like, yeah, I survived, and be like, yep, I drank until I had alcohol poisoning. And then a bunch of people on the internet checked on me to make sure I didn't die overnight. And so I think generationally we've just come to be like, drugs are a part of life, mental illness is a part of life, and our care doesn't look like strangers fixing us. It can sometimes look like riding the waves with your friends until you can figure out how to float. And that's the new concept. Stop looking at Euphoria. Stop looking at all the shows about wild teenagers these days and thinking, why aren't they getting help? Why are they making it look fun? And look at why those kids live, why those kids survive, why we don't have so many documentaries about dead girls and suicide rings. Maybe embracing the fact that life is really fucking messy and that it's okay to be crazy, and finding other crazy people is a thing that's keeping people alive and whole and sane until they can get their lives more together. And that's our new concept. See you next time.